Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the couple minutes late start here. Good morning, Glenn. Thank you for coming today to do our winter briefs webinar on salt brine and using salt brine. Sorry for the late start this morning, a few technical difficulties. So Glenn, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm going to turn my video on here. There we go.
Awesome, awesome. So this is our second year of doing the winter briefs series. It's plaguing us with technical challenges as last week Comcast went out across the nation on Tuesday morning. But glad to have Glenn here today to talk about brine. Glenn, I'm going to let you introduce yourself as far as background and kind of how you came to the work you're doing. And then we can go ahead and get started. So if you want to share your screen, well, introduce yourself and share your screen, that'd be awesome.
Okay, I will try to figure out how to do that here. And I think, yeah, there we go. Can you see it?
Yes, it's coming up. Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah, my name is Glenn Beck, obviously. I've been with Henderson for 26 years. And I've also been with Dickie John Corporation, who makes spreader controls and liquid control systems for 11 years at the start of my career. I'm from Illinois. I live in Iowa now, but I've also lived at the East Coast and kind of been around the country as part of my career with Henderson, working with liquid solutions, granular applications for salt. And so I've been in the industry for quite some time. For probably close to 40 years now. Unfortunately, I have to tell you that because I am getting up there in age, of course. So, but I'm a native Illinoisan. So, and I understand this group is from Illinois.
Yes, yeah, we're based out of Illinois. So a lot of the folks on the call today are kind of northeastern Illinois, Chicagoland area.
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we have a facility in Illinois at Huntley, Illinois, and our main manufacturing plant is in Iowa, which is about 3.5 hours to the west of the Chicago area. And we manufacture snow and ice control equipment and of course brine makers as well at that facility. So that's kind of my background. And did you want me to get started?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and jump right in.
Okay, sure. So this presentation really is focused on liquid solutions, and I guess we're going to wait till the end for questions. Is that correct?
Yeah, and if people have questions as we go along, if people want to put them into the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that, and then we can do questions at the end. Yeah. Sure.
All right. So I'm going to go to the first slide. Do you see the movement there? Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
All right. So basically, we're going to be talking about some of the products we have for snow and ice control, more specifically with brine, but a little bit on the history. In the environment is part of the shift to more use of brine, and the usage not only for better snow and ice control, but also to keep the chemicals on the pavement. Cleaner roadsides and ditches and groundwater obviously help and benefit the environment. It cuts costs by reducing trips, saving on fuel and manpower, and allows for reduced application rates, in some cases up to 50%. And I think you'll see even some that have been reduced by more than that as far as that goes as I go through the presentation. And of course, safety improves travel conditions faster. So some of the snow and ice control and removal processes, the objective is to eliminate an effective or implement an effective snow and ice control program designed to maintain clear roads and reduce impact to the environment. And those methods many times include de-icing, and a lot of agencies are more specifically into de-icing, although that's changing pretty radically fast, very quickly. De-icing involves the mechanical removal of snow and ice accumulation, followed by chemical applications to finish clearing the pavement. And then we'll be referring to anti-icing, and that's the direct liquid of or slurry application applied prior to a winter weather event to establish a protective layer on the pavement, preventing snow and ice from bonding. And this is just a picture, an illustration of anti-icing. It prevents ice from bonding to the pavement, and then de-icing application melts through the snow and ice. And a little bit of the history. Obviously, you all are familiar with snow plows. They've been in existence for over 100 years. Probably the first de-icing for snow and ice control. Then sand and salt spreaders for 50+ years. PreWet applications, really 25+ years ago, and people were experimenting with it, probably 40 years ago, with salt brine and other types of chemicals. Anti-icing, then the proactive approach we'll be talking about more with direct liquid applications, and that's been for 20+ years, starting more out west and then moving to the Midwest and the East, and then slurry applications, and that's been in the 10+ years, and we'll be talking about those different applications here. And just obviously, about the mechanical removal, reversible plows, and one-way plows. You don't see as many one-way plows here in the Midwest, but out east, where they get higher snowfall amounts, you see more one-way plows to get that snow off the pavement. And DeIcing, Antiicing Technology, responsible for snow and ice control vary by the states. Department of Transportation's counties, cities, and towns all have their own fleet practices. And you could call it the 4 R's: the right material to apply, right amount of material to apply, right place to apply, and then the right time to apply. All those go into the strategy. And snow and ice events are different, and agencies use a variety of information to determine how to manage the current and future weather events. And road temperature is very important to this application, and many vehicles have sensors or displays, and this vital information needs to be monitored for any snow and ice control application. It's a great tool. And then of course, forecasting tools, what will happen, temps, precipitation, increasing, decreasing, current conditions, what's happening right now, and then after event status, what did happen, then recording what was done to create a database to how to approach future events. And these are some of the tools. I know many of you probably have them already, but road temperature sensors have been out for probably around 20+ years. They're very popular. And you have a readout in the cab that shows the information, either a separate display or the control system that you have in your cab may have that display too. And then these are some examples of actual weather information that's in the cab of the truck. This happens to be Minnesota DOT, and they can transmit from the truck weather data that's happening currently. And then also they have weather radar that's available in the cab of their truck, so they can see the progression of the storm event. And then we'll talk a little bit about the straight salt application, de-icing, and of course, very typical spreaders here. We also have tailgate spreaders as well. They apply straight salt, sand salt mixes, or straight sand, depending on the event, and then apply during and after snow and ice event, referred to again as de-icing. And salt application rates vary from 200 to 1,000 pounds per mile. Believe it or not, a lot of customers that or agencies that aren't using liquids get up in that 1,000 pound per mile category, which is a lot of salt. And depending on temperature and ice bonded to the pavement, obviously, is the target application rate that the agency would look at. And then if the temperatures are too cold or there's not availability of salt products, sanding is required for lower temperatures and will not melt, but it does increase the traction. Then we get into the pre-wet applications. And a lot of times there's a pre-wet application was, again, started 30 or so years ago, and many people were experimenting with it before then. So you can apply the liquid brine solution to straight salt or even sand, possibly, if that's available. Apply during and after the snow and ice event. Again, it's more of a de-icing procedure. But the main thing with that is you can save salt by reducing the bounce. So you can actually save 30% of, or maybe as much as 40%, just by keeping the bounce from occurring off the road when the spinner spreads salt. It melts ice faster and at lower temperatures, and it breaks the bond between ice and the pavement. And a lot of times the liquid application rates for what people refer to as pre-wet is in the 6 to 10 gallon per ton range. And depending on the type of event, salt application rates can be reduced down to between 200 to 400 pounds per lane mile just by using pre-wetting applications. And of course, you have a liquid tank on the spreader, a pump, whether it could be a pre-wet pump or hydraulically driven pump. And many of these have actually flow meters in them to provide feedback to your control system. So it actually tells you how many gallons of salt that you salt brine or other type of liquid chemicals that you've actually applied. Then, of course, the stages of melting action of pre-wetted salt. So the pre-wet application, as mentioned, initial fast melting by the liquid when it's applied. The liquid ice melting capacity rapidly exhausts and then it creates a diluted ice melt. Solid salt dissolves in the diluted ice melt and then replenishes it. And then the higher the brine concentration, the faster the ice melting. We'll talk about that concentration, how important that is on future slides. But the more dilute the brine is, the faster the solid salt dissolves. And then these two factors eventually balance out, and then you get the additional melting benefit. Then we have direct liquid applications. That's, as I mentioned, agencies have been using this with various types of liquid, but most of them are settling into actually salt brine application for this direct liquid application. And so it applies liquid brine solution direct to the pavement, applied as early as 4 days before a snow and ice event. And this is definitely referred to as anti-icing, proactive approach to a snow and ice event. And many agencies apply multiple applications prior to that snow and ice event. It provides an effective layer between the forming of ice and the pavement and prevents the bonding, and reduces your overall salt usage to achieve bare pavement during the snow and ice event. So the head start you get and the benefits from the direct liquid application is you don't have to apply nearly as much salt or pre-wet after the event begins. So liquid application rates vary from 40 to 80 gallons per lane mile. That's what I've seen. And it can also be used for spot applications on bridges and areas that are prone to icing over or even frosting over. And for this application, of course, you have a liquid tank. You have a liquid pump, generally as a centrifugal pump, and then a boom with spray nozzles. And then most all of them have some kind of control system where you can actually program in how many gallons per mile you want to apply. And it also is ground speed oriented. I think that's very important to this application because it's very difficult to keep the correct application rate of liquids as you're changing ground speed. So the anti-icing application, again, we talked about the proactive approach to managing the weather event. It takes 4 times more chemical to break the bond than it does to prevent it. And of course, this is Minnesota DOT, very cold climate, but they use a lot of salt brine. They've got brine makers all over at their different districts. And of course, you know that they get quite cold in the wintertime, get a lot of snow events, but they truly do believe in salt brine applications. And then the same thing with North Dakota DOT. Anti-icing reduces the amount of time required to restore the roads to a clear, dry state. So those are some statements that they've made in different publications. And then touching again on anti-icing, it allows the plow trucks to quickly and effortlessly peel away snow and ice. So again, it gives you that head start going into a weather event. Can be applied up to 96 hours before the storm, 4 days before the storm. That's what we generally see. Sometimes it's done even farther out than that. It can reduce your rock salt consumption 30% or more. So obviously you get the savings from pre-wet, but then you throw this into it too, so that you get the head start and you get a significant amount of savings for your snow and ice event. And then salt brine is the most highly effective anti-ice solution out there. Straight salt brine is the most environmentally friendly liquid anti-ice solution available today. And then again, the application rate range generally is between 40 and 80 gallons per lane mile. And to give you an idea how much effective salt that is on the pavement, 40 gallons per lane mile is about 92 pounds of salt per lane mile. Here's another example of savings. This is a case study that was done in East Fishkill, New York, which is actually just north of New York City, about 80 miles. They get more into heavy snow events, and it's a little bit colder up there. But it's about a population of 30,000 people. And this study was done more than 10 years ago, but it holds true today. And you can see the numbers, what they had in prior years. In 2008, 2009, that winter, they used about 10,000 tons of salt at $70 per ton. And the cost was $744,000. And in 2009, 2010, they switched over to a liquid anti-ice and de-icing pre-wet application. And they had a greater amount of snowfall, but used less salt. And they had a savings of about $250,000, which paid for a lot of that application equipment too. And of course, the state north of Illinois, Wisconsin, heavily getting more and more heavily into liquid applications, salt brine specifically. And this is actually on their website. If you went to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation website, you would see this indicated that how much actual salt they're saving by going to the brine solution. And of course, you can see through the years that they've continually saved a lot of money. And I think there's actually a statement on here how much they've saved. And it's very important, obviously, to show that savings because of the investment they've made in brine makers in the state of Wisconsin and the liquid application equipment. And this is just a presentation that was made by Jefferson County, Wisconsin, which is basically just east of Madison, Wisconsin. They reduced salt usage by 52% in the winter of 2018, 2019 from the prior winter by using more liquid applications. And they reduced by more than 8,000 tons of salt. A savings of $616,000 was realized. And then again, just touching on the different applications, depending on conditions, a sustainable approach requires use of all tools. So it really doesn't get rid of having to use a plow. Sometimes it does for certain events, but you would use liquid, granular, and mechanical in mini storms. So you still need to use those tools. And liquids aren't really intended to replace plowing and the spreading of salt in solid form, but instead they do enhance and supplement their performance. So liquids are another tool for the toolbox. Used appropriately, liquid deicers increase plow performance because it makes it easier to get the snow off the pavement and ice off the pavement, and reduce the time and amount of salt needed to achieve the desired results when you're de-icing. So you can apply liquid or granular at a much lower application rate once the snow event begins. Here's another example. Actually, this is Idaho, they use they're starting to use more salt brine out in the West as well, including Caltrans, who's been buying a number of salt brine makers and also application equipment. But you can see the difference. This is two different agencies. One is using Antiicing salt brine. And then that's a close-in, obviously, picture of the pavement that's clear. And then the other agency just across their jurisdiction is using straight salt de-icing, and that's in the far view. So you can see the performance between the two. And then we talked about some of the material strategy goals, but obviously number one, prevent ice from bonding to the surface and maintain friction. And that's obviously what we've been talking about, using liquid deicers or slurry applications. And then two, greater create temporary friction traction on compacted snow or ice by using granular deicers. That's again de-icing. And then break an existing ice to pavement bond to regain bare pavement. And again, that is more de-icing. So the blue is obviously anti-icing. The white and the blue, light blue, are more the de-icing applications. One of the things that is very important, again, is the road temperature, and the effective road temperature for brine applications at 23.3%, and that's a very important number. That's the effective temperature that you can apply brine and get melting action. And the eutectic temperature is actually -6 degrees. But at 23.3%, you can get that amount of effective temperature melting as far as that goes. Then, of course, some of the other deicers we've heard of and used quite frequently out there, calcium chloride, and then mag chloride. And potassium acetate is a lot of times used at airports. It doesn't have chloride in it, but that's just another example that you would see it in more in airport applications. Very expensive chemical. And just to give you an example of, we talked about the states of Minnesota and North Dakota a little bit ago, but those are two, basically, these are the states, the United States, that have ambient air temperatures below 15 degrees on average. So all the other states, including, of course, Illinois, is well above that, indicating that salt brine can take care of your liquid solutions application in about 90% of the cases, most likely. And that's what this map is actually showing. This is a really good diagram that indicates how important that 23.3% solution is for salt brine. A couple of the benefits of that is not only for the eutectic temperature that you see there of -6 degrees and effective -15-degree melting power, but the other part of that is that 23.3% solution, salt doesn't drop out of solution. And what you see if you have too much concentration, and this chart shows it pretty well, say if you're 26% in solution, then you actually have less melting power. So it's very important that 23.3% solution is maintained as far as your brine concentration. If you have a brine maker, it's very important you stay at that amount. And of course, if you're less than that, then your freezing point rises pretty dramatically, but not as dramatically as an over application or a higher concentration of salt brine. This slide actually shows some typical applications for blending, and it's not unusual that salt brine is blended with some other types of chemicals. Probably the most common is calcium chloride, and this just gives you a kind of a temperature range of where the different blends are. And a lot of times you see that in Minnesota, obviously, in Wisconsin, where they have lower temperatures, that they're possibly having a snow and ice event. But what I'm seeing also is in that brine blend, it's actually, a lot of people are using only a 10% solution a lot of times of calcium chloride and achieving very good results. This slide actually shows how quickly even just a pre-wet application can melt. So you get melting power very, very quickly by just introducing liquids to solid salt. And this slide actually, I know that I hear a lot of people using sugar beet byproducts, and it does, apparently it doesn't give a significant increase in melting capacity, and a lot of times these are blended with brine, but it does notably reduce the freeze point of water. So once you put it on, it makes it more difficult to freeze. And it does give you more friction too, but it is pretty costly. These are some of the tools that a lot of agencies have. Brine Maker, and then this is a blending system. So the Brine Maker shown here actually has everything built in, so you can just program in how many, what's your concentration level that you want to achieve. There's a density meter on it that closes the loop on making sure that density level is accurate when you're making brine. And then the blending, you can just program in your concentration percentage of calcium chloride, mag chloride, sugar beet juice, and blend it together with the salt brine. And this is done on the go, so it is actually blending at the same velocity as your salt brine is being made. And then we talked about it earlier, but what is the best brine concentration to use? And in general, the maximum concentration of active ice melter not the lowest freezing point, provides maximum effectiveness. So for most plain brine applications, 23.3% calcium or salt brine, sodium chloride makes sense. So in most of the applications where you are going to have a snow and ice event, just salt brine can be used. So how do we make stable hot mixes that will not turn to snot? So that's kind of a slippery application where the salt brine and even if a calcium chloride can get out of solution and make things even more slippery. That's what they're referring to with snot. So depending on the temperatures, 23.3% concentration is very important, especially when you're blending. And this shows an example of if you're at 26% solution of salt brine and then put in 32% calcium chloride, that's how quickly it can come out of solution. That's what this slide is showing. So even 30 minutes after mixing, it comes out of solution, and then you don't have the melting power that you thought you did. And this slide actually shows some stable brine blends at different temperatures, because again, road temperature makes a huge difference in the stability. So at 15 degrees, for instance, getting below that 15-degree point where brine isn't as effective, you could put a 10% calcium chloride mix in, and it maintains the stability, and you can get the melting power. Same thing with mag chloride. A lot of people are using mag chloride as well, but it can come out of solution pretty quickly, as you can see in these slides, as far as that goes. Then we'll talk about a slurry application, and many people are using slurry applications as part of their anti-icing strategy, besides just de-icing. And the reason for that is if you're applying straight liquid applications, it takes quite a bit of liquid storage to do that. So as mentioned earlier, if you're putting down 40 gallons per ton, that means 92 pounds per mile of effective salt that's on the pavement. So with slurry, you can get a combination of higher concentration of active ingredient of salt, and you can go for longer runs on your routes as far as that goes. So more and more people are using it for anti-icing because of that. And this shows how a typical dual auger application works pretty well for mixing liquid. And this just shows a slurry tube that's inside and above the augers, and the augers are reverse flighted, so they just mix the material up as material is being conveyed out of the auger system. And these slurry tubes don't really clog or anything. They've got pretty good sized orifices, so that hasn't been a problem. A lot of people ask that, but it also shows how well it actually mixes up. And this actually happens to be New York State DOT, who's got a number of dual auger applications where they're using it for the brine application for both pre-wetting, slurry, and also anti-icing applications. And this just shows what it looks like coming off of the spinner. Almost an oatmeal type of effect. And just wanted to show this slide because it kind of gives an example of basically capacity that you require to get the same amount of active ingredient on the pavement. So a straight salt application, if you have a 9 cubic yard capacity of your salt spreader at 260 pounds per mile, and of course you've got about a 70% effective ingredient on the pavement to get 200 pounds per mile, you get 66 miles of coverage. And a straight salt brine application for anti-icing, if you're using it as a direct liquid application, And this is with a 1,600 gallon tank. And if you were applying it 87 gallons per lane mile, which is about 200 pounds per mile, that's the active ingredient on the pavement, you can only go 18 miles of coverage. But a salt slurry application, you could apply it 192 pounds per lane mile of salt and 30 gallons per ton of brine, which is about 2.9 gallons per mile of brine solution, and get 104 miles of coverage. And the liquid, that oatmeal content can act as a anti-icing application as well. So the amount of lane miles that you can cover basically is the advantage to a slurry application versus some of the other applications out there. And this is just a chart that that we have that kind of gives us an idea of distances and tank sizes that you might want to consider for a anti-ice application. And I'm going to try to bring this up here on a spreadsheet. I don't think it's opening very quickly, but there we go. So this is basically a spreadsheet, so you can put in how many gallons per lane mile you want to apply at 30 miles an hour with just one lane. Again, it shows you your 92 pounds per mile of active ingredient on the pavement, and you could go 40 miles with it at that application rate. And that's with a 1,600 gallon tank. And of course, a lot of people that have single axle trucks, this is for a tandem axle truck, you might only have 1,000 gallon tank capacity. So you can go 25 miles, liquid miles at that application rate. And that's probably the minimum application rate for anti-icing that you want to do. But if you went up to 80, let's say 80, 87 gallons per mile to get you to that 200 active ingredient, then you can only go 11 or 12 miles at that application rate. So this is just an example of some of the tools you might want to use to determine your tank sizes, the application rates that you are targeting, that type of thing, as far as how many gallons per minute your pump is putting out. And as you increase your lanes, of course, that also reduces the amount of effective miles you can go to. So if you're doing 2 lanes, then you can only go 6 miles with a 1,000 gallon tank. And then if you look at the slurry application, it's the same type of, you can actually determine your tank capacity that you'd need for a pre-wet or a slurry application. This happens to be at 30 gallons per ton, like we talked about, at 400 pounds per lane mile of salt, but you could change that to the 200 pounds we were talking about. And your liquid pre-wet application rate or slurry application rate of, let's see, you've got 15% or 30 gallons per ton. But you'd need at a 300 gallon tank capacity on your V-box spreader, you would be able to go about 100 miles with that, on 9.3 cubic yards of salt. So it gives you an idea how big a tank you might need for the coverage that you require. That's the purpose of this spreadsheet, as another tool you can use for the equipment side of things. And the combination spreader is becoming very popular around the country. These spreaders do anti-icing, pre-wet, slurry, and granular spreading applications. So they're designed so that they can basically meet the requirements of any storm event. So for instance, this particular unit here can handle, it's 100 gallons per foot of liquid capacity. And of course, you can use back and forth depending on the snow ice event. You can start out with the anti-icing, then go to pre-wet slurry applications, and And you can also obviously just spread salt if you need to from a granular application. So a lot of these, they're called 4-in-1 type spreaders. Again, becoming very popular and of course the key is more liquid on board to be able to attack a snow and ice event. So they do direct liquid application, granular application, enhanced liquid pre-wetting, and full slurry application. And these are just some pictures of various equipments. And then the key there is the operator, again, can change application as the winter storm progresses. You can change applications on the go without changing vehicles. And of course, ground speed controls are very important to make this all come together from a stand of ease of use by the operator. This is an example right here where you can be anti-icing in one application, then at a flip of a switch, you can turn over to pre-wet and granular applications. This is another control system right here that basically is used for a multiple use spreader like we were talking about. Has road temperature on the display screen, air temperature, and then the driver can very easily change application rates on the go, direct rate or slurry pre-wet, and changes booms on the display too, whether it be center lane, left lane, or right lane. Then of course, the nozzle sizes make a big difference too for a direct liquid application of salt brine. So typically in a application where you're more in a slower speed situation, you can usually use a smaller nozzle, but it reduces the amount of speed that you can get with your application. So this actually shows that with a fixed nozzle, and a lot of times they would like to have, many people call this a pencil type application nozzle, where it gives you quite a bit of penetration potentially for even if snow is actually a after snow event application. If you're just straight liquid application, then you can get larger nozzles for higher speeds, which would be for a state DOT application on, say, a 4-lane highway. Then these are just different tools that are out there. Again, brine systems that can is precise 23.3% solid concentration with liquid solutions. Depending on the size of the community and the application rates, it's not unusual to really use a lot of liquid in a snow and ice event. And so it's important that you have the production capability with your brine maker. So some of these can do over 10,000 gallons per hour, depending on the type of salt you have and your water that you have coming in for the production. And automatically self-cleaning, so that a lot of salt is very dirty. So if you have dirty salt, you're going to have a lot of byproducts at the end after making salt brine. So if you have automated clean out, then it's easier to control that, and then basically put the byproducts away so that you can not have to actually manually clean out the salt, the brine maker. And then blending systems like we talked about earlier. And a lot of these have communication where you can just have you can turn on the brine maker remotely with an app on your iPhone or your Google device, so that you can tell it to make 3,000 gallons of brine if you need to remotely. And then there's some more simple ones, manual type brine makers, where you can make still a lot of brine per hour, but you have to manually flush the system out. And it really depends on how dirty your salt is. And a lot of customers are going to solar salt because there's just basically no dirt in it, and it can make brine a lot faster. And it's amazing looking at brine salt around the country and how much byproduct is in there. I've seen as much as 30% basically non-salt that you get when it's delivered, and you can really see it in your brine maker when you are making salt, and you have about 30% of something else at the end that you have to dispose of besides salt. So that's the presentation I have today, and I appreciate your time. And did you want to go on for questions then?
Yeah, we got a couple of questions in the chat. Are there any recommendations around any particular products to use on new concrete that might be any different? Any other kind of concerns around new concrete?
Well, I know personally, I was told on my own driveway within you don't want to spread salt on it within about, I think it was about 3 months, something like that. I'm not an expert at that though.
Okay.
There's probably some information on that type of application.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also seen new roads that new roads really buy me that they're using it as soon as it's done, they're starting to use chemicals on them.
Yeah.
But I believe that salt brine isn't as bad as some of the my chloride or some of the other more harsh types of materials.
Sure. And just the really less salt that's in the brine solution. Mm-hmm. Okay. The table that you were kind of throwing numbers into, is that something that is available to share at all, or is that really?
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yep, I'm glad to email you, and you can distribute it if you want to. Or
that would be great. That would be great. Yeah, when we had another question more along sidewalks, but I don't think you guys really focus on larger equipment, correct?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Not that the brine maker couldn't be used for making brine for a sidewalk applicator.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But as far as application equipment goes.
Yes.
Okay. And so, Michael, I'll get back to you on the side with some suggestions for your.
Yeah, there's a company called SnowX. It's a sister company that does have the sidewalk equipment as well.
Okay. Great.
So
great. Let's see. If we had any other questions, you can throw them in the chat. And this, really appreciate the presentation, in that there's a lot of information there that we've heard kind of bits and pieces of in other and like in the training and that, but I think you kind of really put things in a very practical kind of sense,
thank you.
I guess.
Did you want the presentation? It's a PowerPoint. I don't know if you.
Yeah, that would be great if you would be willing to share it. We also have it as a recording. So actually, I'm gonna switch real quick here. Switch screens. And I'm going to share mine real quick. But I did the right one. Let's see, you guys have my screen up now with the.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so we will have all of the presentations up at the SaltSmart website. So we're recording the presentation so that people can go back and look at them, and I can throw stuff back out there for the people who attended, as far as the table and slides for anybody who's interested. And then, like I said, where people would have registered for the webinar today, we will also put the recordings of them up there so you can go back and look at them. And then there's a number of other resources available as well, as far as education and outreach materials. So unless we have any other questions out there, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. And again, thank you, Glenn, for your presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, like I said, I think the way you presented it really kind of pulled together a lot of that information that we've seen in other places, but pull it into like the real world aspect.
Appreciate that.
And how people are using it. All right, well, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for their time this morning. Sorry for the late start, but glad to have everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.